Imagine, you finally get an offer on your home. You and the buyer go back and forth a little bit. Well, your agent and the buyer's agent do. And the two of you land somewhere that you're happy with and feel good about. So you accept the offer. You're probably gonna start to feel like the hardest part of the transaction is over. But really, the transaction has just begun. Because next you have to worry about the inspection, and there's probably gonna be some repair requests that follow. And then after the inspection period comes the appraisal. And mentally, you should really be prepared for anything to happen. I mean, of course you prepare ahead of time for this phase of things to go smoothly, but each phase of the transaction can turn into a negotiation point. And that's why it's important to hire a realtor that isn't afraid to negotiate hard on your behalf. Hi, my name is Hannah Garcia, and I'm a realtor in the states of Wisconsin and Illinois, and this is my channel, Heartland Homes with Hannah. And as of May 2026, I've been selected for the Realtors Association of South Central Wisconsin's inaugural class of 40 under 40, which recognizes rising leaders in the real estate industry in this part of Wisconsin. So if you're thinking about selling your home and you want to work with a rising leader in real estate, check the link in the description to set up a free consultation with me. Also in the description will be a link to the announcement that the association I belong to published. In today's video, we're talking about negotiations. And no, this video is not going to be giving advice on how to win negotiations. This video isn't really going to be giving advice about how to negotiate at all. I'm not really interested in giving that kind of advice, nor do I want this to turn into some real estate alpha mindset conversation. And I don't really want to tip my hand about how I go about negotiating. So if that's the kind of video that you're looking for, then this is not going to be that, and you should probably find a different one to watch. But what I do want to do in this video is I want to prepare you as the seller for what this part of the transaction is going to realistically look like. Because I feel like a lot of people go into this phase of things thinking that the deal is pretty much done once the offer gets accepted. But this is really where things actually start. And being caught off guard by the unexpected things that can usually happen is what creates unnecessary stress. This video is part of a larger series. It is part 5 of 6, basically walking you through the entire process of selling your home from start to finish. And you can click one of the cards up here to go to that playlist if you want to see the rest. Like I said, this is video 5 of 6, and the next video is going to be all about closing and everything you can expect from getting to the closing table. But let's get into it. I think a lot of people expect that the pending period after you've accepted the offer on your home is just signing a bunch of paperwork and waiting for closing day to arrive. And sometimes we do get that lucky, and it is that simple. But expecting that from every transaction is going to leave some room for disappointment if it doesn't go that easy and simple. Because your average transaction is usually a lot more complicated than that. Some things that can make this process take longer than expected is if something comes up during the inspection period. I made a whole video about preparations you should do before listing your home, and I am a huge advocate for pre-listing inspections. But in the case that pre-listing inspection missed something may show up during your buyer's inspection period. Another thing that can make things take longer is if the appraisal is taking longer than expected. Or maybe the buyer's lender is asking them for some additional documents. Or maybe someone in the transaction wants to revisit a timeline or negotiate a repair. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list of everything that can slow things down. Anything I mentioned doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of the transaction and the deal is dying. No, most of the time it just means multiple people are trying to navigate a large transaction together, and there are still moving pieces that are being worked out behind the scenes. And I think having an understanding of anything that can happen beforehand helps you stay calmer when something unexpected does happen. Because if nobody prepares you for this stage of things, every little hiccup can start to feel like a disaster, when a lot of the times it's just pretty normal. I also think it's easy for the seller side of the transaction to forget just how nervous buyers are too during this part of the process, especially when it comes to first-time buyers. For a lot of people, especially first-time buyers, this could be the biggest financial decision that they've ever made in their lives. They're going to be worried about every hidden problem and worried about making the wrong decision, worried about overpaying, worried about something expensive potentially breaking after they've already moved in. So a lot of the questions buyers are asking during the pending period aren't necessarily coming from a place of somebody trying to be difficult. A lot of times they're just trying to feel confident enough to move forward. And I think remembering this and having empathy is never really the wrong approach. And don't take every repair request so personally. We can always counter their offer. Because sometimes the buyer pushing back a little bit isn't a sign that they're impossible to work with. It could just mean that they're overwhelmed and trying to feel reassured before committing to something so big. So we arrive at the inspection period. And like I mentioned earlier, if you've been watching the series up until this point, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for doing a pre-listing inspection before you even put your home on the market. This will make the inspection period go so much smoother because you'll already be prepared for anything that the buyer's inspector will find. And so you won't be blindsided going into this part of the transaction. Because an inspection report, even on a very well-maintained home, is going to list things, probably a lot of things. That's literally the inspector's job. They go through every accessible inch of the property and document any and everything that's a concern, anything that's aging, anything that doesn't meet the current standards, anything they want to flag for the buyer's awareness. It's thorough by design. Again, they're just doing their job. You don't want the first time you're reading an inspection report to be in the middle of a pending transaction. And it's also important that don't take anything as a personal offense. Again, an inspection report will list every little thing, every detail. But that feeling of taking offense to things, it makes complete sense. It's your home. You've lived in it, taken care of it, and now there's a stranger assessing it. It can feel reductive and a little bit unfair, but it's important to remember what the report represents at its core is not a verdict. It's a document designed to surface every possible concern so the buyer can make an informed decision. Older homes have things, even newer homes have things. A report that comes back with a long list doesn't necessarily mean the home has serious problems. Often it just means that the inspector did their job thoroughly. And if there's a lot of little things on the report, that means there's a lot of little things that we can fix and not have to negotiate on. And again, if you do the pre-listing inspection before you put your house on the market, you've already seen most of what's going to be inside that inspection report. You have the chance to address the significant items, and what the buyer's inspector finds might overlap a lot with what your inspector found. Of course, it's not a problem. That's the process working as it should. So doing the pre-listing inspection ahead of time will help you a lot in this negotiation period. So now let's talk about what happens after the buyer's inspection. They're typically going to submit some kind of response. This might be a list of repairs or a request for a credit to get the repairs done. Sometimes they might request both. And this is where things can start to feel like they're dragging on and the buyer is asking for entirely too many things. The list might feel long. Some of the items might feel like they're being too aggressive. And after everything you've done to get the home ready to sell, receiving a document that essentially says, here's everything that's wrong with your house, can be genuinely frustrating. So what comes back on the repair request is almost never meant to be a personal criticism of how well you've cared for your home. Again, it's the buyer and the buyer's agent just doing their job, doing their due diligence as they should. The buyer's agent job is to advocate for the best possible outcome for their client, and my job is to do the same on the seller's end. That just means the buyer's agent is probably going to ask you for some things, and they're testing the waters to seeing what you're going to concede on. And that is the point at which you decide whether your boundaries are firm and you're not going to concede on any repair or credit requests, and then your agent advocates for whatever you decide your boundary is. And you've got some options when it comes to repair requests. You might address the items and get the easy repair done yourself, or you can offer the credit for the buyer to do the repairs instead of doing them yourself, or you can push back entirely and just refuse to do any of that, or you can counter their offer and say, I'm not willing to do everything that you asked, but I'm willing to do this much, or give this much in a credit. This is one of those situations where the instinct to dig in and say, absolutely not, take it as it is, and to refuse doing anything just based on the principle because maybe the requests feel unfair can work against you. Not because you owe the buyer everything that they ask for, but because walking away from a transaction over a repair request that could have been negotiated is a costly overreaction, because it means you're probably going back on the market and you've lost time, you've lost momentum, and the next buyer is going to find the same things on the inspection. But of course, you're the one with the final say when it comes down to it, and having an agent that's going to navigate the pending period and get you your best outcome obviously is crucial. Okay, so now let's talk about lowball offers. When someone offers you significantly less than your asking price, it can absolutely feel like an insult. I get it, but I want you to think about the last time that you bought something. Anything significant. A car, a piece of furniture, anything where there's room to negotiate. Most people, when they're spending their money, are going to try and spend as little as possible. And that's exactly what's happening when getting ridiculously lowball offers. Some buyers come in low because they genuinely aren't sure what the home is worth, and they're testing to see where you're gonna land. Some come in low because their agent advised them to leave room for negotiation. Others come in low because they're trying to conserve as much of their money as possible, and they figure the worst that you can do is say no. In almost any case, I'd advise you to not reject the offer outright, but make a counter offer that reflects where you actually stand, and let the negotiation happen from there. Most of the time, buyers that come in with a lowball offer aren't trying to be insulting, even if it comes off that way, but they're trying to see where you stand. They're hoping to start a conversation, so give them one. Now, of course, like with everything, there are situations where an offer is so far from reasonable that it doesn't make any sense to engage with them. That's a judgment call that you and your agent are going to have to make based on the specifics of the offer and the market that you're in and all of the things. But those situations are less common than I feel like most people assume. But in most cases, I would always say make a counter offer instead of rejecting it outright. All right, now that we've talked about those things, let's touch briefly on appraisals. I did a full video on appraisals. That's the 4th video in this 6-part series, so I won't go too deep on the mechanics of it here, but I do want to talk about a common potential issue, which is what to do if the appraisal comes in too low. So like everything, if the appraisal comes in too low, you have a couple options of things that you can do. You and the buyer side can come back to the negotiation table and decide on a new price. The buyer could make up the difference in cash, and sometimes you can contest the appraisal with additional comparable sales data. There's usually more to work with than it initially feels like. So low appraisal is not the end of the world, but it requires a calm, clear-headed look at all of the available options rather than immediately assuming the worst. This is a moment where it's really important to have an agent that will sit down and talk about all of your options with you so that you can make the most informed decision on your situation. Because all of these things can be super frustrating, and it's easy to start to feel like the ground is shifting underneath you even after you thought everything was settled. And being frustrated by all of those things is completely valid, but just take a step back, take a deep breath, and let your agent guide you through all of this. Now, I want to spend some time talking about seller concessions. You might also hear these be called seller credits. There's a few words for this, but it's definitely worth spending some time talking about, because these are genuinely one of the most misunderstood things about real estate transactions. And I'll be honest, there's so much nuance here that this topic could be its own video within itself, and I'll probably make that video at some point. But let's just go over the basics of what they are and how they function. A seller credit is when the seller agrees to contribute something, usually it's money, towards the buyer's costs as part of the deal. The most common forms of seller credits are usually assisting the buyer with closing costs, giving repair credits, or sometimes the buyers use the seller credits towards buying down their interest rate. When people hear the word concessions, the gut reaction is often negative. It feels like you're giving something up and like the buyer is getting something extra. But I want to reframe how you think about this a little bit. They aren't asking you personally for this money. They're asking to get some of the money that the bank is giving you for the sale of your home. Yes, it could mean you net slightly less money at the end than maybe you would if you didn't agree to give some seller credits, but agreeing to reasonable seller concessions is often what's going to keep the transaction alive. It's not just the buyer taking advantage of you, it's a structural adjustment of how the money is being arranged that allows the transaction to get to the closing table much more easily. And obviously, getting to the closing table is the goal. Think about it this way. The actual financial impact to you depends heavily on how you look at it. Does it mean that you might have slightly less money in your pockets at the end of the transaction? Yes. But is it often the difference between a deal closing and falling apart? Also yes. And the alternative is losing the buyer and starting over. That's usually not going to be your best option. Seller concessions are tools. They're ways to make the transaction work for both sides when there's constraints involved. The decision whether a specific concession makes sense in your situation is something you're going to work through with your agent based on a lot of things. The full price, the offer, the market, your timeline, your alternatives. But the concept of seller credits itself is not something to be afraid of. I'll go much deeper into seller credits in its own video, but that's just something I want you to keep in mind when it comes to negotiating, because everything can be negotiated. And it's really easy at this phase of the pending period to hit a point of negotiation fatigue. The pending period can last weeks or even longer. And during that time, it's easy to feel like you're stuck in this weird middle ground where the house is halfway sold but not fully closed yet, and mentally you've started planning your next move, or you have started moving already. Or maybe you're entirely moved out and you're just waiting for this to end. You're scheduling things around the closing date. You're emotionally attached to a specific deal working out. So every delay, every unexpected request, every additional negotiation can start feeling heavier the longer the process goes on. And after a while, people get tired. That's completely normal. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, it helps to go into this part of the transaction understanding all of that beforehand, because not every transaction moves in a perfectly straight line from the point of accepting the offer to getting to the closing table. There's usually bumps along the way. Not necessarily huge disasters, but just things that need to get worked through. And when you expect the unexpected going in, it usually helps those frustrating moments not be so overwhelming. And what I want to encourage people to be careful about is never make a decision in an emotional state purely because you're getting exhausted and just want the process to be over. Sometimes it's easy to get really mentally drained halfway through the negotiation period, and you can either overreact or react emotionally to things that are happening, or you may agree to doing things too quickly just to make the stress stop. That's usually when it's best to slow down a little, think things through carefully, talk with your agent, and avoid making impulsive decisions in the middle of stressful moments. And it's important to be real here. Not every pending period is going to end in the deal closing. And that's okay too. There are situations where the buyer's requests are genuinely so unreasonable, and the gap between where they want to be and what makes sense for you is just too big of a gap to bridge. It's not a failure on anybody's part. Sometimes it's just the right outcome and two people were not meant to be in the transaction together. Not every transaction was meant to close, and chasing a bad deal to its conclusion isn't always better than going back on market. What I'd caution against is walking away from the deal in anger. As I said earlier, don't make emotional decisions, don't rush things just to make the stress stop. Once again, think things through clearly and think about all of your options. Sometimes what feels like an impossible situation has a workable path and it isn't obvious in the moment, but sometimes walking away absolutely is the right call. To bring this video to a close, I want to end this conversation by reframing negotiations a little bit, because I think a lot of people come into this part of the process with the wrong mindset entirely. Real estate negotiations aren't about winning. They're not supposed to be some kind of battle where one side dominates over the other. Most of the time, it's just two different parties trying to reach an agreement that both sides can be happy and live with. Well enough at least to get to the closing table. Buyers want reassurance that they're making a financially good decision. Sellers want a fair outcome for something that they've invested years of money, effort, time, and emotional energy into. Both of those perspectives make sense. And when you zoom out a little, most negotiations are really just people trying to work through a very large life decision while balancing finances, emotions, timelines, uncertainty, and stress all at once. That doesn't mean the process is going to be easy necessarily, and there are absolutely moments that you're going to get frustrated or be completely drained by. But just understand that a certain amount of back and forth between you as the seller and your potential buyer is completely normal. Don't let it scare you and don't let it freak you out. Selling a home can be a lot more complicated than you expected going into it, and honestly, I think the negotiation period is where a lot of that pressure tends to peak for a lot of people selling. Because at this point, you're tired, you're emotionally invested somewhere else, and You just want to live with certainty again. But going into the pending period with understanding that you're gonna have to make some negotiations, there's going to be repair requests, the buyers are probably gonna ask for some concessions, there absolutely could be some delays and a back and forth conversation. All of that is completely normal, and expecting that makes navigating all of it a lot easier than every bump in the road feeling like it's a catastrophe and you're never gonna sell your house. And that's also another reason why I spend so much time preparing sellers before we ever hit the market. Because preparing your home itself is super important, but also preparing yourself mentally is important too. So if you're thinking about selling your home in Wisconsin or Illinois and you want to hire a rising leader in real estate, someone with recognition from their local association, then check the link in the description and book your free consultation with me. As always, the consultation is free. And if this video helped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on so you never miss a video from me. We've got one more video in this seller series, so stay tuned. And up next, we'll be talking all about getting to the closing table. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.